Here's Brody Brazil.
If I could be totally honest with you, the real video I want to come on here on YouTube and make would be to tell you about the Rays and progress they're making with the city of St. Petersburg and Pinellas County and how maybe they've turned a corner on all these negotiations. And it doesn't even matter if it's fixing up the Trop or settling that arrangement for a brand new stadium. Whatever progress they could make would be a good thing. And whatever connections they could make would be a good thing. Because right now, it really feels like the exact opposite is happening. The Rays and the city and the county, they're all growing and going in opposite and different directions. And now we're getting to the blame game, and we'll tell you the latest from the Rays, but it just feels like every little piece of new information, whether it comes from the government or whether it comes from the baseball team, it's not a good thing. It's a negative development as part of this process. So in terms of pointing the finger, this came out on a season preview radio program on WDAE-AM, and it was meant to be like a season preview type program and show, but it included Rays co-president Matt Silverman, who said this about the entire situation and how votes were delayed back in October and November, largely because of Hurricane Milton, which passed through Florida and obviously ravaged the Trop, but vote delays happened. And then the process delay happened. Here's what Matt Silverman said about that. Quote, "They effectively broke the deal and turned their back on the commitment they had made to us in August." He's talking about the county. So everything that's happened on the ballpark front since October has been a result of that failure, the county commission's failure to complete its approval. Now, there's a couple instant takeaways. We'll get to the ultimate takeaways in a second. A lot of past tense there, some very specific finger pointing right there. That doesn't feel like we're going to have a positive development right around the corner. This feels like a lot of negativity and a lot of reverse past tense type thinking. Now, this is also some more analysis that comes to us from an article in the Tampa Bay Times, which also used that quote. The Tampa Bay Times said this about the radio program: "The interview broadcast, which was pre-recorded and sounded like it was scripted, came 1 week after St. Petersburg Mayor Ken Welch sounded the alarm that the sides may not be able to rekindle their agreement. During his annual State of the City address, the mayor emphasized that he would commit no more public money to the stadium project and proposed redevelopment of the area around it." So you can see where this is going. Both sides are, again, in their own directions and viewing things their own way and saying their own things, and nothing looks like it's getting any better. The delay in the cost, let me just remind you what that's all about here. Approval delays in October and November. The Rays will tell you that the cost of the entire project, which is a multi-billion-dollar project, went up $150 million. Now, to some degree, I understand you don't want to pay any more for something than you absolutely have to, but if we're only talking about $150 million in the scope of a 30-year, 40-year, 50-year project and a $2 billion project, like at the very least, $150 million, you'd think there would be a way to bridge that gap and make all of these things right. It just does not seem insurmountable. That is a large amount of money, but it doesn't seem like an insurmountable amount of money for all parties involved here. The stadium is not on the 2028 timeline anymore. Obviously, they're now looking ahead towards 2029. The Rays also say that they can't do a split season. They don't want this thing done mid-28 baseball season. It's got to be done at the beginning of a scheduled calendar season. There's also this external criticism from so many who say that the team is simply getting cold feet. They're trying to back out. They're trying to do something else. They're trying to consider Orlando, which we'll also get to that later on in this video. So there's a lot of criticisms, but yeah, maybe the team doesn't have the funding. But the Rays will tell you that adding private investors, they say, is the easy part. They can get this money. They can do this. They're questioning whether they actually want to or not right now. Enter Matt Silverman and some more recent quotes that he had in this radio program. "Financially, we were really extending ourselves with this ballpark project. It wasn't a question of having the dollars. We had the funding secure, but more a question of, does this investment itself make sense in the context of Major League Baseball and fielding a competitive team for the next 30 years? Now, I'm not sure where exactly he's going. Those are very vague topics, because what does fielding a competitive team for 30 years have to do with the funding right here, right now? $150 million as a Major League Baseball team? shouldn't sink you for 30 years. Like, those two things should not necessarily be connected. He went on to say we stretched, like in terms of making this deal happen in the first place, we stretched because we really wanted to do this project for us and for St. Pete and for Tampa Bay. But when that timeline slipped and when the cost went up, $150 million, and really when we lost the support of our partners at the city and the county, when they said to us not one more cent after they didn't uphold their end of the timeline, that's when the reality started sinking in. I mean, again, that's a lot of past tense right there. That's a lot of looking back and regret and finger pointing and blame. And some of that, to a certain degree, you would expect with this back and forth, but this seems very straightforward, as if this is being said because there is no corner to turn or there is no tipping point of where any of this gets better. The deadline, by the way, is right around the corner for this deal to either happen or not happen. It's March 31st. But St. Petersburg, the city in Pinellas County, back in late 2024, they approved for all of this to move forward kind of under their terms. Again, they didn't agree to it in October or November. They did this in late December, but it forced the Rays to now have their checklist items complete, including an initial round of funding by March 31st. Otherwise, this deal, the whole thing, it expires. And then they start from scratch. And I believe it was the mayor, Ken Welch, who was basically saying there that if this starts from scratch, it's not a good thing. We can't just redo this deal and make it work all over again. If the deal ends, also, the Rays lose control over all that land. The 65-acre gas plant district site, which is where Tropicana Field currently sits, where they want to build this new ballpark and project. So it's more than just the financials. It's a land deal that the Rays will greatly lose out on if they don't start the wheels by March 31st. Obviously, more than a month now until that takes place. But at this juncture, mid-February, it's hard to see how this is going to go. You may have seen these quotes before from Rays owner Stu Sternberg. This is what he told the Tampa Bay Times maybe about a week and a half ago, but I want to just reiterate this quickly to understand his perspective on things. About the deal, I lose sleep over it. I'm trying. I know whatever decision I make, I'll be able to look in the mirror and put my head down on the pillow and know that I can live with myself with it, the decision of what to do here. If the Rays were for sale, that's a question, right? Is he trying to sell the team? Is he considering selling all of the team, some of the team? If it was for sale, people would know it. I've always been, and I will continue to be pretty transparent about our intentions and not pretty, but very honest about them. And I have been. That has not necessarily served us well for the last 3 to 4 months in the stadium issues and discourse with the city and county, but that is who I am and will continue that way. Having the money and putting it in are two different things. Now, here we go again with securing more private funding to bridge that $150 million gap. The Rays say that this is not a hard thing to do. We can get a hold of the money, he says, but does it make any sense to do it? That's really it. But I mean, wasn't this a deal that the Rays initiated and proposed? And it's a little bit of a different deal now, but it's not like it's $1.5 billion difference. It's $150 million difference. And you kind of have to plan for that ahead, right? It's no different than if you and I see an item on sale somewhere and the advertised price is specifically $79.99. I'm just making this up. Well, you know that there might be taxes. There will be taxes, and there might be a delivery charge or something. You might end up paying closer to $90 than $79, right? So you have to factor some of these things in. I'm surprised this is a shock to them that maybe it didn't pass when it did. Also factor in Hurricane Milton and how bad that would have looked for the city and county to be passing all of these things for a baseball team when their region was ravaged by not one, but multiple natural disasters in sequence. Sternberg also said this, I'm not saying a decision on this or that, but I'll be prepared coming out of this meeting that was the owners' meetings in Florida, baseball owners' meetings, and speaking to owners here. There's a lot that goes into it. I don't know what the rush is for anybody. Well, I mean, March 31st is a deadline, but or what the rush is for us. If this is, in fact, a multi-generational decision, I don't think anyone will care if it's a date in January, February, or March. Well, I do think employees and fans and everybody in the baseball community, they want to know this information as soon as possible, and it would be tragic to them if there was a drastic decision that comes from this. We're not talking about, are the Rays going to just get this done or not, and they're staying in the Tampa Bay and St. Pete area for sure. Like, this is a possibility, in my mind, that they're unstable and they might move somewhere else. Okay, more on that here with the takeaways. I've seen this movie before. I've seen a team propose something. I've seen a city come back and say, well, we can do most of that, but not all of it. Here's our deal, which we've approved, which you're now part of. I saw that with the A's. Was that 2021 or 2022? The years kind of mesh, but that's how it happened with Oakland and the A's. Oakland had a deal that they liked. They worked up their own version. They signed the A's up for it, and that's the deal. And then the A's obviously did not want to be part of that deal. They didn't feel like it was their deal. I've seen this movie before, and look how that went with the A's in baseball. And if Tampa fans are out there, I've seen this sentiment, and I wanted to address this. If Tampa fans think that relocation and a vote for that, which would prevent the team from moving, because you just heard Commissioner Rob Manfred say, oh, that it would not make sense to move Tampa. Well, 10 years ago, he said, in 10 years, it would be a shame if there were no A's in Oakland. And now there's no A's in Oakland. The relocation vote for the A's in 2023, late 23, it was unanimous, right? 30-0. What do you think would happen if the Rays went up for a relocation vote? These are owners voting for other owners. They will approve whatever Stu Sternberg wants to do, or whoever might be buying the franchise. If you think a relocation vote is going to save you on this, because those things used to happen. Decades ago, relocation votes saved a baseball team, saved other hockey teams, saved basketball teams, saved the Sacramento Kings from moving to Seattle. The league and its board of governors said, you know what? No, you're not moving to Seattle. You're staying here in Sacramento. But that's not going to happen here with Major League Baseball. And there is the Orlando factor. Orlando exists. A ton of money exists. Approvals exist. It might be more enticing for the Rays to move over to Orlando. And I'm not suggesting I hope that. I'm just saying the fact that Orlando is out there and the dreamers are dreaming, that is a thing. And there's a lot of past tense in the way the Rays just approach those statements. I'm one to read into body language and word choice. And I don't have body language on a radio program, but in terms of word choice right there, it very much seemed clear to me that the Rays were thinking, like, this is why things went bad and this is why things are not working or not going to work because of all that past tense. And so my question remains, what's the turning point on this? Where does it turn a corner? What's the tipping point? What fixes all of this? What makes this better so that it's not the blame game anymore, so that the Trop either gets repaired and they can play there for a handful of years, buy themselves time, or the new stadium situation gets figured out? What is the tipping point here? Because right now, they've hit a fork in the road, they're going opposite directions, and now they're hitting the gas in going those opposite directions. They're getting quite far from each other. And like I said, I've seen this before. I don't love this at all. I hate this. I wish this were a different video, but it's starting to get a little uncomfortable. And if you watch back on these videos and what I've covered so far, I'm hoping someday you won't see an I told you so situation, but it's starting to feel like that. That's the end of this video. Thumbs up down below. Really appreciate that. Helps me, this video, and this channel. One more thing, go down there and make sure you are subscribed to this channel. That way I can definitely see you back here next time.